To deal with my family's pressure to get I spent 10 yuan and married a stranger. I thought the other party, like me, was eager to change their family situation. So feeling guilty, I treated her like a prince in the days after our marriage. But an unexpected event revealed her true identity to me. I never thought that my wife, who left early and returned, was actually Jinwan, the little princess of a 3 years ago, annoyed by my aunt's endless I impulsively had a flash marriage with a blind date. After leaving the civil affair, we each held a small red booklet in our hand. At this moment, Lin Qingshui suddenly, "Aren't you afraid I might be a scam?" I gave a wry smile and countered, "What do I even have that's worth scamming?" Then I added that I would wait for the right time to explain everything to and then we'd have a meal together. Hearing this, Lin Qingshui was puzzled. Wait for the right time. She thought that someone like me, eager to get, would drag her home immediately. After all, when we first met, the words I said were quite odd. Just earlier, I told her that even a fake marriage for appearance. I also said I was in desperate. When I held the marriage certificate in my hand, my feelings subtly shifted, thinking that I no longer belonged to my aunt. The resentment in my heart seemed to calm down a bit. Then I looked at Lin Qingshui and said I would go to say goodbye to my family. Lin Qingshui nodded, showing no intention of just as I was about to ask, "Should I see you off?" The words got stuck in my. I quickly pointed at the old, shabby electric scooter. "Do you want me to take you home?" Lin Qingshui was stunned. As someone who had been a director and a lady CEO for me, it was the first time she'd heard a man say, "Let me take." Those words hit her like a bolt of lightning. Seeing her expression, I wondered if I had said something. Did I overstep? After all, I had just said it that even if we had the marriage certificate, if it didn't work out, either party could leave. So I explained, "I noticed you came by taxi earlier. I thought you didn't have a car, so I offered to give you a." Lin Qingshui glanced at the tiny The wheels were worn, probably used for 7 or. It was a secondhand scooter. It didn't look great, to be honest. Luckily, I had already but hadn't picked it up from the shop yet. I now make my living running an online shop selling handmade paintings. Sometimes I do live stream tutorials. I currently earn about 10,000 yuan. If I didn't spend so much time on housework and dealing with my aunt's I could have earned even more. Lin Qingshui asked if I had a driver's license. "If there's a car you like, just tell me," she said. "I can buy it." I quickly shook my head and said, having a girl willing to marry me and she already made me happy enough. How could I take advantage of her further? These days, divorce rates are so. Lin Qingshui didn't press the matter. As for where we'll live, she said, "Wait for my notice." I nodded and said I wasn't in a rush, though deep down, I was eager to move out. I'd long wanted to escape my aunt's 60 crammed with 5 adults and 1 child. I was sleeping in a less than 3 square meter going to the bathroom and showering was 2 years ago. I decided to move out and rent, but my aunt nagged me for an entire. "After feeding and housing you, you're just going to leave as soon as." She said I was forgetting all the kindness. In truth, she just didn't want to lose the living expense, and managing the housework alone would be. After parting ways with Lin Qingshui, took a taxi back to the entrance of the cafe, where she then got into a luxurious black Rolls-Royce. The driver, already waiting, asked "Are we heading to the company headquarters or the villa at the 4 p.m. meeting?" Lin Qingshui was actually the princess of the wealthiest with assets worth. After her parents left, for most of the family affairs were entrusted to her. At this moment, Lin Qingshui's phone rang. She answered, and her mother's angry voice came through. "Lin Qingshui, what on earth is going on? Didn't you promise me you'd behave? Why did the other party say they did?" Lin Qingshui knew her mother was truly upset today, so she explained that Mr. Lian had no sense of. "I waited for him for over 10 minutes. He probably cared and took longer to get. You should reschedule and have a proper." Without hesitation, Lin Qingshui refused. "No need. I've already registered my marriage." Her mother was stunned into silence for over 10 seconds. "Registered for?" "The Lin family's dowry policy now doesn't require old-fashioned. Besides, the Lian family isn't on our level. If you and Dad really like him that much, one of my younger sisters can take over." Before her mother could respond, Lin Qingshui directly hung up the phone. Meanwhile, I rode my little electric scooter back to my. After getting off, I touched them and felt like I was dreaming. In less than 2 hours, I had gone from single to, and it was with a woman. I knew nothing about that. Afterward, I bought a bunch of orange. My cousin likes these sour fruits. The old building didn't have an elevator, so I climbed to the 6th floor. As soon as I walked in, my aunt was hanging low. When she saw me return, a smirk appeared on her face. "When you left, didn't you swear you'd never come back? Why are you back as soon as you finished packing?" Hearing her sarcastic tone, I normally would have felt stifled, but today was different because I knew I wouldn't be staying here much longer. For some reason, I felt a sense of tolerance. I smiled and placed the oranges, looking at the messy floor with scattered toys. I bent down to tidy up. My aunt quickly finished hanging she hung them carelessly and waddled into the small living room. Did you go out and realize you had no options? I didn't respond or get angry. In fact, I should be grateful to my aunt. Although it was the neighbor matchmaker who introduced it was through my aunt's connection that I got the blind date opportunity. The guy was handsome and seemed to have good prospects. As much as I disliked it, I had to admit I owed her some credit. Just then, the door suddenly opened with a creak. My cousin came back. She was holding a sleeping baby girl in her arms. As soon as she noticed her mother's sarcastic tone. She knew my work was not easy these days. Plus, I had to contribute to the household. She gave her mother a helpless look. Don't say so much. My cousin has been working so hard, managing his little shop and taking care of us. Taking care of us? What are you talking about? My aunt, we're the ones taking care of him. If I hadn't agreed to let him live with us back then, he might still be in the orphanage now. Not enough to eat or wear. Auntie put away the snacks on the table. Even with this, you still look introducing dates to him. He's so picky. If it weren't for today's discovery, he wouldn't have come back. I laughed, but the more I listened, Auntie, you said the date didn't get married? Auntie glanced at me. They said on the phone they were too busy with work. And busy with work? My foot. Clearly, they found out about they didn't want to waste their time. That coffee cost dozens of bucks. They didn't think it was worth it. Auntie's words were like a machine. She spoke so fast, my head buzzed loudly. I asked Auntie, what's the last name of today's blind date? It's Zhang, a relative of Sister Zhang next door. Boom, another buzz. The stuff in my hands dropped. The floor almost got a dent. Today, the woman I talked to for over an hour, her last name is Then. Why didn't Lin Qingshui? I forced a bitter smile. I ended up so muddled, marrying a woman I knew nothing. I opened WeChat. Lin Qingshui's profile. Could it be she also mistook me for someone and thought I was another blind date? Thinking this was possible, I couldn't help but feel I wanted to send her a message, but didn't know how to start. Auntie thought it was what she that stung me. She felt a bit better and you just figure out how looks aren't enough. No one in the family, you can only rely on yourself. My cousin heard this and she gently pulled her into the bedroom, then returned to the living room and looked, don't blame my mom. She just speaks too bluntly. Our family situation really isn't, don't take it to heart. My cousin Wenwen has always had a good temper. In this family, besides my taciturn uncle and my smooth-talking, only Wenwen is close. Unfortunately, now all her attention is on her child. The daily exhaustion is clearly, if it weren't for me, often helping out on the side, with Auntie's careless, Wenwen would probably be completely worn out. Wenwen is 4 years younger than me, but she's already a mother to. At this moment, Wenwen took out a packet of pumpkins. Quietly, she said, bro, I saved these for you. Don't let my mom see them. Wenwen often saves things for me. It really touches me. Compared to my younger brother, who's often out, Wenwen has always been kind to me over the years. Thinking about moving out soon, and that no one would be there to help. She'll surely struggle a lot. I couldn't bear to hide it any. After a moment of silence, I took out my marriage certificate from my pocket. Wenwen, I got married. Just got the marriage certificate with someone I don't even know. In the silent living room, Wenwen's eyes widened completely. She was so shocked she blurted out. She covered her mouth, looking at me in disbelief. After a moment, she quickly snatched, seeing a photo of me and a strange woman on it. She confirmed it wasn't a joke. Who is this? Why did you suddenly get us? The woman on the marriage, her features looked as if her eyes exuded a cold sharpness. She didn't seem easy to deal with. I wanted to tell her about the mix-up that led to, but then I thought I was afraid she'd worry. So I made something. Actually, it's someone I've known before, just not too well. We figured we'd get married since the timing was right. Bro, this wasn't someone you met online. There are a lot of scammers on. Wenwen knows at my age, the family's pressure on me. Plus, I'm so busy every day. I barely have time to manage my online store, let alone date. Getting married all of a sudden today? I hope it's not a scam for a dowry. I smiled to reassure her. If she were a scammer, she wouldn't have married me. Lin Qingshui seems decent. Don't worry. I've got it under control. Wenwen nodded. Her eyes suddenly red. Knowing I'd soon be leaving this home, she said, bro, you got married, so how much dowry did she ask for? When are you planning to hold the wedding? It can be simple, but you only get one chance in life. I shook my head. She didn't ask for a dowry. As for the wedding, my parents are gone. We'll decide together later. Besides, everything is expensive. We're just ordinary workers. It's better to save the money. Wenwen, being emotional, started to tear up. I looked at her helplessly. Don't be sad, I said. I'll come back to see you from time to time. Wenwen asked if I knew what her family did. I recalled our conversation during the blind. Lin Qingshui said her parents did odd jobs years ago. Later, they went abroad. They were busy on and off, hardly caring for her and her sibling. Years would pass without seeing. I figured her parents probably went abroad as I didn't press further out of. Lin Qingshui works at a big company now. The benefits are pretty. Wenwen nodded. When you have kids in the future, make sure to take care of the family. Don't let them struggle like me now. I mumbled a response, already breaking into this misunderstanding today. I had to clarify things with her immediately. If we both mistook each other for this marriage certificate wouldn't last long. Thinking this, I took out my phone, ready to message Lin Qingshui. Unexpectedly, she sent me a message first. Lin Qingshui asked where I wanted to. I wondered, did she mean where we should rent? She didn't seem to realize that she'd married the wrong person. I quickly replied, Miss Lin, don't you think we might have made a mistake today? She responded, what mistake? Today you said if we could accept it, we'd marry. And I agreed. Isn't that just perfect? I was momentarily. She had a point. I only wanted to escape this house in the first. What difference did it make if it was the neighbor? Living together with anyone would be. Today we were very clear at the table. With our ages, there's all kinds of family. Why not get married? If it doesn't work out later, we can walk away anytime. No one owes anyone anything. Thinking of this, I suddenly felt at ease. Lin Qingshui asked again where I wanted to live. Smiling, I replied, let's rent a place that's midway between our workplace. It'll be convenient for 20 minutes later, she sent me an address. The neighborhood, Mingdu International, has a nice. Just hearing the name, I knew the rent. I hoped Lin Qingshui had chosen a small. That way, splitting the rent, the burden wouldn't be too heavy. When she messaged me, Lin Qingshui was still in the car. After a busy day, he is now resting. She, a lady from a prominent family, suddenly married such an ordinary man. There are many things she can't reveal to me. His intentions are simple. On one hand, he uses me to oppose his parent, because he really dislikes that arranged. On the other hand, he thinks I am somewhat special. The butler took 10 minutes to pick out a suitable house. He respectfully handed the key to him. Miss Lin? This is one of my properties in Mingdu. You can stay as long as you like. Lin Qingshui looked at the key in her pocket. It had been a long time since she last. Such small, easily lost items were too. Replace it with a password. The butler nodded respectfully. The next morning at breakfast, I could feel it. The atmosphere at the breakfast table was. When several times wanted to tell mom about my with a woman but held back. My brother-in-law. He's always working. Uncle didn't come back. Seems like he went drinking. So I was the only man at home. The atmosphere was unbearably oppressive. Aunt was somewhat dissatisfied, picking at her food. Too many eggs in the dish. While washing dishes, I thought, this might be the last time I wash dishes. Aunt, holding a fan, complained while this month, you only contributed 45. Luchen, aren't you earning 15,000 a month now? Last month, you even why are you contributing less? My sister said the new online store needs a deposit. There's only so much money. How much could the deposit possibly? Are you feeling stingy now? Luchen, that's not right. When I was raising you, I wasn't. Why are you starting to scheme now? My tone was very calm. Aunt, I might move out today. My cousin wanted to say something, but I stopped her with a. I looked at my aunt again. I'm going to live with my girlfriend. She has already rented a place. Hearing this, my aunt was stunned for a full 2. When did you get a girlfriend? I directly pulled out a red envelope. Here's 10,000 yuan. I withdrew it from the online store last. It's all yours. From now on, I'll live on my own. Thank you and uncle for taking care of me. Seeing my determination, my aunt realized this wasn't a. Which girlfriend is it? Are you planning to marry her? I didn't answer. I just kept wiping the floor with a rag. Until the afternoon, my aunt occasionally muttered. I couldn't help but laugh. Not long ago, she kept saying, I shouldn't be so picky. If I didn't get married soon, I tidied up the house meticulously, cleaning it thoroughly one last. Unfortunately, my uncle hadn't. Carrying my bag, I bid farewell to. I'll come back to visit often. Wenwen's eyes turned red again. She held Lele's little hand tightly. My aunt wanted to ask, but I didn't dare to explain. Meanwhile, her daughter kept. Then I called a cab and headed to the location. Lin Qingshui's rented apartment was on the 12th floor. Unit. When I got in the elevator I happened to run into a locksmith. Stepping out of I marveled at the great landscaping in the. But when I reached Unit 208, I knocked for a long time only to find the front door had a high-tech fingerprint password. I tried pressing the doorbell but there was still no Then it hit me. Although I had agreed with Lin Qingshui to come over, but we didn't agree on a specific time. I wasn't sure when Lin Qingshui would arrive. When I pulled out my phone to call her, I realized we only had each other on WeChat. So I initiated a voice call through WeChat. The soothing piano ringtone played over and over, but no one answered. Miss Lin, are you there? I've arrived at Mingdu Internet. Could you tell me the password? Lin Qingshui was in a meeting. Her phone had long been set to silent. 40 more minutes passed in the blink of an eye. Lin Qingshui still hadn't replied. My legs were sore, so I had no choice but to sit. This made me start to feel a little suspicious. Could it be that I was really scammed? I pulled out the marriage certificate and looked again at Lin Qingshui's serious expression on her faintly curved lips in the photo. A real scammer wouldn't dare get it. That would be too much of a sacrifice. And the other party is a woman. She's probably just really busy. I could only wait for her. Who knows how much time? Meanwhile, Lin Qingshe finally finished her meeting. In the large conference room, executives in suits got up one after another. Lin Qingshe watched them sternly. Today's report was crucial. It summarized last year's and set goals for the next. After finishing, she was the first to leave. Her male assistant followed, holding her. Boss Lin, you have a missed voice call. Lin Qingshe tiredly asked who it was. The assistant opened WeChat. When he saw the name in the chat window, he hesitated. Kun Kun can't play basketball. Lin Qingshe frowned. What is that? She thought it was just another strange man. Ignore it, just get in the car. Back at the villa in Shanshui Man, Lin Qingshe sat on the sofa and casually opened. The butler came over. Miss, you should go rest in the bedroom upstairs. The air conditioning in the Qingshe squinted her eyes, and today was spent listening to reports and handling. It was exhausting. The butler behind her seemed hesitant to say, Miss Lin. Lin Qingshe, drowsy, turned back and looked at him. The locks at Mingdu International have. Lin Qingshe responded with a hum. Halfway up the stairs, she suddenly paused. Mingdu International. Wait, I think I was supposed to move to. She finally realized she had gotten married yesterday. Married to a man who was both a stranger, a man named Lu Chen. Lin Qingshe's mind snapped. She became half sober. She grabbed her phone and opened the unread messages. Sure enough, Kun Kun can't play basketball was a contact she had added yesterday. She had forgotten to update the note. She glanced at the time. It was now 10:20 p.m. I had arrived in the afternoon. Lin Qingshe hurriedly tried calling but my phone was already off. Helpless, she quickly instructed the driver to Sorry, I didn't check my phone. I've been so busy today. Even in the car, Lin Qingshe made sure to explain. Meanwhile, her younger cousin Lin Wanrong, wearing slippers, came. Before she could greet her, she saw her elder sister rushing. Curious, she turned to the butler. Where is my sister going? The butler hesitated. The eldest miss instructed not to share too much with others. Lin Wanrong smiled slightly. Could my sister really be married? Yesterday, my aunt called her dozens of, leaving her so stunned she didn't know what to say. At home, Lin Qingshe's word was law. No one dared go against her will, and no one dared to comment on her personal life. Among them, Lin Wanrong was the most obedient. Standing by the large glass, Lin Wanrong watched silently as her sister's Rolls-Royce slowly left the villa. Her eyes were filled with sympathy. She probably couldn't stand the nagging of her aunt, so she randomly found a man to foolish. It's both courageous and heartbreak. Even though the Lin family doesn't need marriage, this time, the eldest sister was indeed too. Judging from the aunt's word, the man might not even be from their circle. Most likely, he's just an ordinary. At Mingdu International, 1208, as Lin Qingshe, she saw me sitting in the corner, resting my head on my arm. Her heart trembled. A sudden wave of guilt surged within. Lin Qingshe walked forward and gently tapped my shoulder, saying she wanted to call my name, but forgot what it was. Before she could remember, my shoulder twitched. I suddenly lifted my head, eyes drowsy. When our eyes met, we both froze for a moment. As I realized it was Lin Qingshe in front of me, I remembered I had been waiting for her. I'm sorry, I was busy. Lin Qingshe muttered words she rarely ever. I wanted to stand up, but found my legs. I couldn't muster any strength. Lin Qingshe looked at me. The atmosphere became awkward. After a while, with her help, I finally managed to stand up straight. I gave an embarrassed smile and, could you tell me the password for the door? Lin Qingshe stared blankly at the lock. In her rush earlier, she forgot to ask. She awkwardly cleared her throat, took out her phone. Then she stepped into the hallway and made a phone call to someone. When she returned, she paused and added, realizing the significance of the numbers, an awkward silence followed. I entered the digits and the door opened. The spacious living room, the size of the house surprised. I limped inside. The size of the house surprised me. I limped inside. It's a luxurious 5-bedroom, at least 200 square. Every room was incredibly spacious. My heart was in my throat. This must cost a lot in rent. Miss Lin really didn't consider my financial situation. Lin Qingshe, however, walked in with a calm expression. She silently scanned the furnishings. Her face showed a barely satisfied. The decor was luxurious, full of high. I walked out of the room. Although the house was beautiful, just like my dream home, choosing such a place right now was overly extravagant. I asked nervously, Miss Lin, may I know the rent for this house? Not expensive, she replied. How not expensive? I pressed. At this point, my heart was bleeding inside. Lin Qingshe didn't understand why I was so fixated on not wanting me to ask further. She casually replied, this location, such a large, only 1,000 yuan. As someone who has worked, I wasn't easily fooled. How is that possible? I retorted. Lin Qingshe, few people would question. The landlord is my relative, she explained. Happy now? That seemed reasonable enough. Such a great house for 1,000 was practically. Thinking about how I had always insisted not to take advantage of Lin Qingshe, I realized I still owed her. I glanced around the room again, dragging my numb leg. The sofa, wine cabinet, everything was great, except the bedroom felt. However, the large balcony it looked like it could hold a lot. The master bedroom, it has a walk-in closet and there's also a private bathroom. Without a doubt, this room is definitely for Miss Lynn. I chose another room with good lighting. After settling my luggage, I went to the kitchen. The kitchen was spotless. There wasn't even a pot. We should get some furniture and kitchen. Fortunately, all the bedrooms already. I couldn't help but admire her relative's thoughtfulness. Your relative is quite even prepared blankets. Lin Qingshui gave a faint. She trusted the butler's work. While replacing the locks and cleaning, the butler even prepared 2 sets. Otherwise, tonight, while tidying up the bedding in both rooms, I asked, so is the rent paid monthly or quarterly? I told you, it's a relative. This kind of thing isn't. Lin Qingshui had just sat down on the sofa when her phone buzzed. She opened her phone and said that I had transferred 2,000 yuan. What's this for? I stepped out of the room to help split the rent and deposit. Lin Qingshui wasn't sure whether to laugh or she couldn't understand why I was so hung up. Without saying a word, she forcefully refunded my transfer. I was stunned. But we agreed, didn't we? A marriage in name only means we should share financial, then keep the money for furnishing the house. Lin Qingshui rubbed her temples. She was exhausted, her whole body devoid of energy. She didn't have the mind to argue about trivial matters. Noticing her fatigue, I told her, the master bedroom is ready. Go get some rest. Lin Qingshui let go of her and glanced at me with I pointed to the room next door. I'll sleep. Lin Qingshui nodded. She said nothing. She stood up, walked straight in. It wasn't that she was hard. Before figuring out my true character, she wouldn't let things become too intimate between us. She wanted to avoid an ending we could. After freshening up, I lay on the soft, cozy bed. I was reluctant. It felt like I was dreaming. I was afraid that when I woke up, I would find myself back in that tiny 3 square meters. The next morning, soft light streamed in through I opened my eyes, feeling a sense. Stretching, I walked out of the room, intending to make breakfast. Then I suddenly remembered the kitchen had no. I decided to go downstairs to buy some soy, but I didn't know what Lin Qingshui usually. So I went to her door, knocked twice, and called out, "What do you want for breakfast?" After waiting a few seconds, there was no response. I knocked again, but it was still silent. I hesitantly placed and gently turned it. Seeing the empty bed, I realized I had no idea when she had left the house. Picking up my phone, I thought about message, but then I realized that would be infringing on her freedom. I wasn't in a position to question her, was I? Forget it. If it's something important, she'll tell me. So I went downstairs alone for breakfast. On my way to work, I still felt puzzled. Lin Qingshui didn't even say anything before. Could she have left in the middle of the night? I worked at a shared office with my half the space was for while the other half was Wang Wei's life. We'd been good friends since school, with similar interests and hobbies. However, Wang Wei's family background was we shared similar interests, but Wang Wei came from a much better family. He was the only child in a middle. When Wang Wei saw me finally show up for work, he asked with concern, "What had taken care of kids at home again?" While tidying up my half of the office, I went on a blind again with your aunt. The girl wasn't that attractive, and she seemed pretty material. Don't compromise just because of your age. If it doesn't feel right, don't act like some gullible, accepting what others don't. I've told you before, he continued. Your aunt's place is too stifling. Rent an apartment, or let me lend you some money. Anywhere is better than living there. You're giving half your income every month, more than what bandits would take. I'd lost count of how many times Wang Wei. It's true, my aunt raising me, but over the years, I'd paid my dues with housework, and I'd repaid the debt long ago. Half the office was filled with racks of dazzling clothes. Thanks to Wang Wei's entertaining live stream, he had gained a significant. By now, he was a somewhat famous entertainment. Casually, I said, I got married. I moved out yesterday. Wang Wei let out an "oh," but then stopped in his tracks. His eyes, what did you just say? You got married? He looked at me incredulously. You have a girl? Although Lin Qingshui and I to keep things low-key, I knew it wouldn't stay a secret for long. And since Wang Wei was a close friend, I decided to tell him the truth. I nodded. We got the certificate. Wang Wei froze. After hearing the gist of my story, he asked, so it was a flash marriage? You married someone you just met? Do you know how risky that is? What if she's just after a dowry? Leaning closer, he whispered, did you two spend the night together? Did anything intimate happen? I blushed instantly. Although we are married, I think that as long as Lin Qingshui doesn't initiate, I won't. No. We are still getting to know each other. He seems pretty nice for now. Wang Wei wasn't in the mood to tidy up. How could you do something so risky? You don't even know much about him. Marriage is one of the most important events in life. If I had known earlier, I would have introduced a few relatives to you. Despite his concern, Wang Wei still gave me a thumbs up. I admire you. You have the courage to make such a decision. I chuckled. Let's leave it to fate. I once heard a blind fortune teller in the marriage in this lifetime is predestined. No time like the present. Wang Wei put on a gossiping expression. What you're experiencing now is like a. But the male protagonists in novels always marry rich, those with countless family. How about your partner? Could it be you got lucky? I joked, how many rich second generations are there? Do you think they grow on trees? As long as he's an ordinary without bad habits, I'd already consider myself lucky. Novel plots are just dreams. Fun to read, but never to be taken. Wang Wei nodded in agreement. We were busy until 11 p.m. Wang Wei had a big turnout on his live stream. His followers were about to hit. After logging off, he originally wanted to, but he got a call from home and had to rush back. Before leaving, he made plans with. I nodded. I painted a landscape of Foshan. It was nearly midnight when I finished. I locked the door. I took out the keys to find my old electric scooter. Strangely, last month, the scooter shop owner said the new one would arrive, but I still haven't received any updates. As I rode my scooter to the intersection, I was about to turn when I suddenly remembered I'd moved out. I had to change directions and head toward. By the time I got home, it was I pushed open the door, and the room was pitch. Lin Qingshe wasn't back yet. I tidied up the house a bit, washed up, and rearranged the kitchen. Then I sat on the sofa, admiring the beautiful house. Even though it was, this spacious feeling was truly great. After a hot shower, exhausted and sleepy, I collapsed. Meanwhile, Lin Qingshe, surrounded by bodyguards, was leaving a grand hotel owned by her company. Today was the ribbon cutting. After meetings and reports, she'd been busy all day. At that moment, the driver pulled the car. Lin Qingshe rubbed her temples, about to get in, when a voice called out from behind, "Sis! Where are you heading?" It was her younger cousin. She had already heard that the housekeeper had assigned an empty house. So, which house are you and your new husband staying in? Lin Qingshui, visibly impatient, asked. Why are you asking? Lin Wanrong confidently replied. Auntie told me to keep an eye. Hearing this, Lin Qingshui glaring coldly at her cousin. So are you? What a joke. Who could keep an eye on you? Why would I bother wasting my... If I had time, I'd rather take care of my... But when Auntie scolds me later, just help me out. Then Lin Wanrong added, Sis, I recently read a novel by Ben Liu. It's about an ordinary guy from a regular family and a domineering CEO who hides her identity. They get married quick. It's just like your situation now. Lin Qingshe suddenly became interested, even though she never reads such childish. How does the domineering CEO hide her identity? Lin Qingshe thought for a moment and asked, what car does the protagonist drive? It seems to be a Dongfeng, worth around one. Lin Wanrong smiled at Lin Qingshe. Sis, are you planning to learn and imitate? Lin Qingshe thought that she did and need such a car. So she turned and instructed, notify my to get me a Dongfeng. She adjusted her outfit slightly and asked her cousin, do I look like an ordinary person? Lin Wanrong thought Lin Qingshe was joking with her. Of course not. This suit you're wearing, anyone who checks the price will know. Besides, in today's world, except for drivers and insurance, most people prefer casual, comfortable clothing. Lin Qingshe found this reasonable. She realized she lacked casual, everyday clothes. Just then, her male assistant approached the car with an iPad. Tomorrow's schedule has been arranged. Please take a look. Lin Qingshe casually took it and skimmed through, mentally noting the key details. I woke up early and went to the kitchen. This was a habit I developed during my years. Every morning at 5 a.m., I would wake up to prepare breakfast for the... Today I was extra mindful. After changing clothes and freshening up, I gently tried turning the doorknob. Lin Qingshe must have come back very late last night. At the moment, she was still sleeping. I returned to the kitchen and started cooking. Today, I fried 2 eggs and 2 fragrant sausages, along with 2 bowls. I also washed 2 pieces of fruit, simple yet nutritious. When I set the breakfast on the table, I suddenly realized it might not be. I wasn't sure how much Lin Qingshe would eat. For me, this breakfast was perfectly fine. But if Miss Lin didn't have enough, thinking about this, I ran downstairs to buy. When I returned home, Lin Qingshe was already eating breakfast. I smiled and asked her if the breakfast. Lin Qingshe nodded but didn't say a word. She then realized she shouldn't be so cold toward, so she casually asked, what brand are these buns? I was taken aback and stammered, Miss Lin, what do you mean by brand of buns? I thought she was joking. Since when did buns have brand? But Lin Qingshe looked at me seriously. Even food has its own brands. Did you buy an unlicensed product? I stared at her with wide eyes, unable to comprehend how a normal person could say something like, they're just the most common street. The stall's name is Nutritious Breakfast, and it's always crowded. Lin Qingshe understood immediately. So it's an unlicensed product. Is it hygienic? It should be, right? She normally wouldn't eat food from street stalls. If a housekeeper had done this, she would have scolded them. In the future, you can order, don't eat from streets. Lin Qingshe's tone was calm. Go to a hotel for steamed buns? I was surprised, then suddenly realized maybe she was trying to show off her sophistication. Is this how the elite white-collar workers in large companies live their lives? Oh, I have something to ask you. I suddenly remembered something important. I wanted to ask her yesterday, but what is it? Lin Qingshe didn't even. It felt like I was giving a report to a supervisor. I noticed before that her way of speaking
Unintentionally
has authoritative
revealing a
tone, leadership aura. Despite her polite and elegant, she must be deeply strong-willed. I put down my chopsticks and said, "Should we keep our marriage a secret from our families?" I've been conflicted about this, deliberately hiding it from. It seems somewhat unrealistic, frank, but afraid of trouble. Lin Qingshui lowered her head. This should be handled based on the family situation. Anyway, he had already told his mom about the family butler, the driver, and his cousin all knew, but he wouldn't allow them to interfere, let alone overstep their bounds. Can I just nod in agreement? I asked. Then I'll handle things on my end. Lin Qingshui meant whether to tell the truth to the family was as long as it didn't cause for the two of them now. After finishing them, I was getting ready to leave for work when Lin Qingshe suddenly stopped. At that moment, there was a slight complexity on her. I turned back and looked at her. Could it be that she was angry because I bought those shady? She seemed upset. Lin Qingshe took out a black bank card from her pocket. She placed it on the password is 6. Use this card whenever you need to buy. I looked at her in surprise. Then I smiled and shook my head. Miss Lin, this marriage of strangers who knows how long it will last. Spending someone else's save makes me feel uneasy. Lin Qingshui smiled at my stubborn. Just take it, she said. After all, the things you buy are for both of us. If you keep being so formal, we won't develop any feelings, even in. I was touched. That's true. If two people remain overly polite, their interactions will never feel natural. I stepped forward and took the card. I'll keep track of every penny spent from this card. Lin Qingshui didn't respond. She didn't even bother to check it. The money in the card was she usually spent on a single. He didn't have time to fuss over such trivia. He could see it clearly. The man in front of him appeared compliant, rarely saying anything, but deep down he was strong. He was a man with his own principle. As I reached the door, I turned. Miss Lin, are you heading to work now? Would you like me to give you worn-out electric scooter flashed through her. Lin Qingshe instinctively refused. Then she remembered the car she had instructed her. It had been hours since the instruction was. She hadn't expected the task to. I smiled slightly. All right, Miss Lin, I'm off then. After saying goodbye, I closed. Lin Qingshe was momentarily. She suddenly felt an unusual sense. This was the first man to deliberately say goodbye to her. She had only ever seen such a scene in TV dramas, and she found it extremely. Thinking it was overly sent. Going to work is going. Just leave directly. It's not like you're not coming. But for a brief moment, she felt a warm sense of comfort, even though the door was already. Lin Qingshe still let out a soft grunt.